What is going on, everybody? I am back today to talk about another new release film that came to VOD recently that I read a couple of reviews on, and it sounded really interesting. The reviews were kind of all over the place. There were people who really liked it and people who thought it wasn't very good, but I thought the premise was extremely interesting. And with a lot of people discussing like the fast-paced nature of the movie and just how quick it gets into the narrative, I was really interested to watch it, and the movie I'm going to be discussing with you today is New Life. New Life is directed by John Rossman, a mysterious woman on the run and the resourceful fixer assigned to bring her in. Their two unique stories inextricably link as the stakes of the pursuit rise to apocalyptic proportions. So I was excited to check this movie out, knowing very little about it, and I really enjoyed this movie. I definitely think it has its fair share of flaws. It's not a perfect film by any means, but I really respect the director's approach to the movie. I really like the way that it introduces us to the characters. And I think this is one of those movies that going in knowing very little about it will make the experience more enjoyable for you. And I'm going to talk about it today without revealing any of the twists or talking about the direction that it goes in, just giving you some very vague, brief details to the movie, and hopefully you'll check it out. So at the beginning of the film, we are introduced to Jessica Murdoch, played by Haley Aaron, and she is completely covered in blood. She has a black eye, and she's running down a street, and we see her constantly looking over her shoulder. She runs into a house. We don't know whose house it is. She goes inside, gets herself cleaned up, and decides to go on the run. And she's out hitchhiking. She eventually ends up getting picked up by this man and going to the farm where he lives with his wife. And we slowly start getting information about where she came from and what's going on with her. And at the same time, we're introduced to Elsa Gray, played by Sonya Walger, who is a person that has been hired to track Jessica down. And we can see she's struggling with her health early on in the movie, and we learn very quickly that she has ALS, and she's going to slowly start losing complete and total control of her body. And she's kind of fighting with the idea that she's not going to have her own bodily autonomy, while at the same time trying to complete this job for her work, tracking Jessica down. And the entire film is this cat and mouse chase between these two people and trying to learn why she's out to chase down Jessica and what is going on with Jessica's character. So, as I said, I thought this movie was really enjoyable. I don't think that it's perfect by any means. It definitely has its fair share of flaws, but there's a lot that I will compliment. For starters, I think the two lead performances here are really exceptional. I think to jump into a movie where you get very little to no information about either one of these characters makes it all the more effective. When you have to be along the ride with them and slowly get that information introduced to you, it makes it really exciting for you as an audience member. And I think even in the slower moments of the movie that the performances are captivating enough to really be impactful. Not to give away too much detail, but there are some violent sequences in this movie, and I was really impressed with the practical effects. It's very gnarly and disgusting. There's a lot of attention to detail and kind of the goop and the grime that shows up in this film. And I really love when films stay practical, and this movie looked entirely practical, and I was really appreciative of that. And it's a concept that you've seen before, and I don't want to talk about it too much, that has been popular, but I think the unique approach to the movie makes it enjoyable and makes it its own thing. The cinematography is pretty nice here. I do think there are some moments that are a little darkly color graded that make it kind of harder to see what's going on. But overall, I think the attention to detail and the visual style is really great. As I said, Elsa's character is dealing with ALS, and I think there's a really interesting conversation about the human body in this movie and like control over the body and diseases that take over the body, and the conversation that's had about like someone not being willing to come to terms with the fact that they're going to completely lose control over their body slowly, and it's going to cripple them to where they're going to have someone help them. And there's a person with ALS that shows up in the movie who has a conversation with her about like, hey, you can't be defeated by this, and the perseverance of the human spirit and wanting to continue forward is the best thing that we can do to show other people that just because we have this thing doesn't mean it's going to destroy us. The movie kind of shows people very quickly losing control of of their body. We see it in multiple sequences contrasted with this character who is slowly losing control over her body. And I thought that the commentary on that was really fascinating. And it seems like that was really where the director was trying to land with this film. There's also something with Jessica's character that is a lot about this wanting to escape and wanting to live this life somewhere else, and like contrasted with that idea of losing control of your body and no longer having the ability to travel as easily or get around the way you want to. And I think there's a lot in this movie about like trying to make the best of a circumstance even when things get really bad. As for some of my problems with the movie, the character writing isn't super deep. Obviously, Elsa's character, the big thing is her going through this disease. And Jessica's character, we get a little bit of her backstory with what happened and how she got to this very specific point. And her character's longing to travel and be somewhere different. I think it's easy to attach onto because so many people experience those things, but her character doesn't get much deeper than that. I think that there could have been some help with the screenplay adding a little bit more to her character. I don't think it necessarily detracts from what the movie is trying to do. That's just a personal preference where I feel like adding more to her character would have made the film more effective. And Elsa's character really hinges on that disease diagnosis, and I think she does a really great job with it. She has to do a lot in her performance with like losing control over her body in moments, and that's something I really liked. I think the shift in tone in the movie was really well executed, but there is some stuff in the first act that I feel like could have been trimmed down or reworked to make it a little bit more effective. In the third act of the movie, the very last sequence, I wasn't the biggest fan of. There are moments about it that I liked, but I don't necessarily think it 100% packs the punch that the director was looking for in relation to what they discussed earlier on in the movie. And that's not to say that I think that it ruins the experience of watching the movie by any means. I just think that it could have been more effective if it was approached in a different way. But overall, aside from those few critiques, I think it's a fun movie. It's not reinventing the wheel by any means. Once you get the plot reveal, you'll be like, hey, I've seen this in movies before. But I think it's unique enough and entertaining enough to make the experience well worth having. So have you seen New Life? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Leave me a comment down below and let me know what you thought. I thought this movie was really entertaining. I do think that it's flawed, but I still think it's an enjoyable experience that'll take you by surprise, especially if you go in blind. As always, if you can like the video and subscribe to the channel, helps me out a lot and lets me know the type of content you're looking for. I'm always putting out new material and look forward to getting more out for you in the near future. And as always, everyone, thank you so much for watching and have a great rest of your day.